Hello, everybody. Welcome to our interesting part of our mega meeting today, where we're going to do something a little bit different. We're really fortunate to have with us Tricia Cook. Tricia, some of you that go back a long time may remember Tricia from 7 years ago, 2014, when a pharmaceutical company sponsored Tricia's presence in our mega meeting, which was much smaller then 7 years ago than it is now, to really help us with our engagement with the patient satisfaction. And it was a wonderful experience we had 7 years ago. And now we've had the opportunity of bringing her back and trying to update us on where we are. And boy, not only has the last 7 and 8 years been different, but the last year or two has been tremendously difficult for CTGI and every one of you individually. And Tricia has an experience as a consultative person for 18 years, offering businesses around the country help when it comes to engagement with customers. In the last 8 years, she's actually been strictly more in the medical field, helping out with hospitals and developing trust with staff and patients and providers to try to help move things forward. Well, as you know, about 1.5 years ago, we ran into a situation called COVID, and everything changed around here. In fact, in literally one weekend, when we had a complete shutdown of the practice, the stress that was placed on the entire staff, the entire organization, patients and everything was unbelievable. And I got to say that this staff, Tricia, has really been amazing in working through it. We turned our practice over with telemedicine within 24, 48 hours, and we're able to maintain everybody working to some degree and everybody staying employed with us to really kind of get through this. And now coming back after being vaccinated and coming back after COVID after 1.5 years, we are in a different world because the stresses that we see placed on not only our staff, but the providers and expectations from our patients are all different. COVID has really been a whirlwind and has really changed things dramatically around here. And I guess, I think we should really just start. I just wanted to kind of give you sort of a sense of where we were before the pandemic, what the pandemic has done to us. And now maybe you can kind of help us along the way as we build ourselves out of the pandemic to think about what everyone has been going through as far as stress, not only at work, but personally.
Mm-hmm. It's so true, Dr. Kappa. Well, thanks for having me back. And I'm excited. I wish I could see some of the folks out there that I met 7 years ago, but we'll make this work. It's a tough time, and your team has been through so much. They dug in, worked right through it. Connecticut GI enabled people to continue working. So there's this wonderful trust factor happening, but it's been a hard time, not just for your patients. I mean, historically in your industry, in your group, and when we talked 7 years ago, you have some sick patients. They are uncomfortable, they're nervous, they're embarrassed, they're not always as pleasant as they would normally be. And then you throw them into this environment where a number of people avoided treatment or didn't come or continued to come but were nervous. And then you take all of your amazing staff who continue to show up, whether it was telemedicine or back in when they're juggling their own stresses that they're having with their family and taking care of multi-generations and homeschooling. It's been a tough time, but it sounds like you all have done a great job. So my message would be, I want to look at all of your folks right now and talk to them instead of you, Dr. Kappa, and say, I'm in awe of all of you. You all had the amazing ability in the first seconds of interacting with your patients every day to make them feel better about the care they're getting, to make them feel that this is a safe place, to make them feel that they have come to a place where people care and treat them like family that you all do. And you have continued to do it every day. And your jobs are impactful and they're important. And I sometimes think with all of this stress and with all of the number of patients and huge growth you've had, I think you forget the amazing impact you have every day. And one of my favorite quotes that I like to tell healthcare groups who are working so hard is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. And I think your teams touch 30 lives a day, but they're so busy and they're doing so many things. And many are, when we're short staffed, juggling many things, I think you forget to pat yourselves on the back. But I think one of the other things I'd love to tell you about is a little story about a Shasta daisy. There is a great story from a book by Fred Lee called If Disney Ran Your Hospital, 9.5 Things You Do Differently. And I think in the situation where you are, this is a story that works well because many of us, you might be on patient number 18 of the day. And patient number 18 is this lovely, I don't know, older woman named Ethel. And you are the first person she's seen. She's had her hair done to see you. She's wearing her new scarf, hopes you ask about it. She's excited to see you. But unfortunately, patient number 17 stepped on your last nerve, which is totally understandable given everything that's going on. So what I want to talk to you about is this Shasta Daisy story to see if we can help give patient number 18 and 19 our full heart, like you always have done. So in this story, in this book, there's talked about a nurse who was training new nurses, and she pulled out a Shasta daisy and she said, everybody look at the Shasta daisy. And let's imagine that each one of these petals is something we are blessed to have in our life. And she went around the room and she asked people to share what they were blessed to have in their lives. And Joe and Jen went to a number of you, and here's some of the things your team said they're blessed. You're blessed to being healthy and having a healthy family. Someone said you're blessed that CTGI kept you all employed even during this tough time. Someone said a roof over their head, food in my fridge. Someone said amazing colleagues that I get to learn from every day and this opportunity to continue to learn and grow. Someone said summer Fridays. Someone said your dog Luna, working for a company that didn't furlough, academic success, learning something new, compassion, being cancer-free. I looked, nobody said wine or chocolate. I usually see that. But anyways, my point is, she said, so when we think about our blessings, doesn't it make you feel good? And she said, I have to believe that each one of our patients, as they get older or as their disease is progressing, some of these petals start to fall off. And with each loss of these petals, there has to be a true sense of grief or of discomfort or sadness. You know, as some of your patients maybe their disease is progressing, you know, maybe they can't have the foods they like. Maybe as they're getting older, they cannot continue to have the job where they have these amazing colleagues and they lived every day. Maybe the roof over their head, they have now been moved into a 12 by 12 room and they've been allowed to bring 4 things from the home they had for 47 years. Maybe their dog is no longer with them. Maybe their kids and family are no longer visiting. And her point is that when we look at our patients who maybe have lost a lot of their Shasta daisy petals, it's got to be really hard. And for them to come in and sit in one of our waiting rooms for 20 minutes where they're uncomfortable or embarrassed or suffering embarrassing symptoms, it's got to be hard to be pleasant and kind and thoughtful. And so when patient number 17 steps on your last nerve, try instead to think about maybe the Shasta daisy isn't as full, and it might enable you to just take it in and put yourselves in their position and be grateful for your own Shasta daisy and let you give everything you can to Ethel. And while I say that for our patients, I need right now with COVID, I think we need it even more for our colleagues. All of you are wrestling with things. All of you are taking care of families. All of you have petals on your Shasta daisy falling off for different reasons. And so my ask for all of you is when a colleague maybe is a little abrupt with you, or maybe somebody isn't as pleasant as they normally are, give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe their Shasta daisy isn't quite as full, and take that extra energy to help understand them. So that would be my suggestion, Dr. Kappa, to helping people deal with it.
Great. That's great, Tricia. I think what it really comes out to when we look at that Shasta daisy, we realize that it's not only our patients, but it's ourselves. And I think that that's very important. And that's how we have to take care of each other and portray that image to others. You know, one of the things that we very carefully monitor are these patient satisfaction surveys, and we get these kudos that pop in. And, you know, just a simple one that kind of relates here is that one that came in that said, all of the staff is great in this office, a refreshing break from many of the other practices. And it kind of shows you that how we portray ourselves with each other and externally to our patients is very, very important out there to kind of recognize that and put them a little more comfortable. I mean, you mentioned about Disney, and if Disney ran my hospital, and one of the things personally that's great to me is my love for Disney. I've been there 25 times and just returned for the first time with my children and grandchildren. It really was a spectacular experience. And in Disney, you could just see that everyone, and we talk about this even through our management team and trying to help with our staff, there is something called the Disney way. It's a way in which every individual is really a member of that team that kind of contributes in a way. And I think, understanding that every person matters and is an important thing in a simple way that we can kind of bring to our practice with that. And I think that transforms well, even into a medical practice.
I agree. And I don't know if your whole team knows, because not all of us have been 25 times. How fun. That's why you're such a happy person. You're always going to the happiest place in the world. Walt Disney had a goal that every time you step into Disney, that people have 60 positive touch points, reminding them that why this was a good idea to bring your family here. And he's all about it's the entire team. So that's why when you drive in, there could be a parking attendant wearing Mickey Mouse hands and Mickey Mouse ears. And your kids are like, oh, is that Mickey? And you're like, no, that's just a happy person. And when you buy your tickets, they say, have a magical day. And when your 6-year-old can't decide which balloon they want, they get them have 3. And they even let my 8 and 10-year-old sit in a stroller. I know, but it made it easier. And the garbage cans even talk to you. And so I am a big believer in every member of your team is equally important in helping drive that patient experience. Every one of us can give great customer service, but if one of us falls down on it that day, it hurts the customer experience. So I am all about every single person matters and contributes to the whole thing. Your administrative assistants, they are the first face of the practice, whether they are on the phone, where best practices of a smile coming through and using someone's name and listening to when they're done so you don't cut them off. And when trying to schedule an appointment and it's too far out, understanding that this is hard and can I put you on a wait list, to being that first face. When someone walks in and there's a smile on their face, and maybe if you've seen me before, I've been there before, welcome back, Mrs. Cook, or putting your pen down and making eye contact. Those best practices on the administrative assistant end, you're the face of and the voice. And you're equally as important as any member of the team. Take it a step further. You MAs, when you call me back, if you say, and I don't know whether you're allowed to say my whole name or my first name for HIPAA reasons, but if you say Trisha Cook or Trisha or Mrs. Cook, and you smile and you don't just hang at that door, and maybe if I'm like rounding up kids and a stroller and all that, if you come on out and help me and bring it back, and you talk to me and say, oh, you've got a great team today. I see you're seeing Dr. Kappa. Did you know he's one of the best physicians? He was on that list once. That is like seeing me, hearing me, and not just saying, how are you? And not making eye contact and walking down the room. There's a difference between saying the script and meaning the spirit of it. You schedulers, your scheduling team, they are so important. There is so much information that you have to give in those situations. They actually say, and this is for everybody, but even for the schedulers, they have to give so much information. They say the average patient leaves the average medical interaction and promptly forgets 40 to 80% of the information you gave them. So that means the average patient leaves interacting with any one of us, any one of you, and at best remembers 20 to 60% of what you told them. The average patient of that 20 to 60% remembers half of it incorrectly. So that means the average patient leaves the average medical interaction correctly remembering 10 to 30% of what you told them. You have so many things you need to tell with prep and scheduling and things you need to do ahead of time. How do we make that better? Use more of your biological senses. Hear it, say it, see it, write it, associate it. So with your team, with your patients, I know all of you with our team, you tell them, you hope them, you tell somebody. You sometimes give people things to read, but not everybody can read. 43% of adult Americans function at or below basic literacy. Medical literacy is even worse. Maybe you give them a pad of paper, you have them write it down. Maybe you have them teach it back to you, or have their colleague or family member say it. Maybe you're showing them, here's the GI tract, here's where your flare is, or here's what your prep looks like. Those are best practices from the schedule standpoint. Oh, you billers, your billers are so important. When you billers can put yourself in their shoes, here is somebody who is wrestling with a GI illness. Many of your GI illnesses affect your lives and your interactions and the things you can do so much. And then they get a big bill, and it's hard to understand what's covered with insurance and what's been put in. When you billers can be empathetic and listen empathetically, not just listening to respond. In the United States, a lot of us listen to respond. But if we could instead listen to understand, if we can listen with our ears to understand, if we can listen with our heart and say, what is this person dealing with? Look at what they're wrestling with health-wise. Look at the family support that they have or they don't have, or they're older and they have no one else helping them with this. Look at this scary financial thing, and what can I do to make it better? That is as important as anything clinical that can be done for them. Every one of your team has a huge responsibility and opportunity to make a difference. Oh,
that's
and
great.
You think you had a good kudos for that one too, didn't you? I think one of your kudos was, let's see, from check-in to check-out, all staff members were very friendly. My medical assistant has a great personality, very bubbly and friendly. Great way to approach sick patients. As a patient, you come in a little stressed and nervous, and she makes communication very easy and pleasant. That's lovely.
Wow. I think Tricia, what that really says, we often focus, one of our corporate goals is focusing on patient satisfaction. We get these objective numbers, we get these comments, but really the whole thing, I think what you described, not only in Disney, but especially in that kudos comment, it's really, yes, patient satisfaction, but it's more than that. It's the patient experience. And what you described in that kudos was somebody from the beginning to the end, that everywhere along the way. And Disney often talks about, they're putting on a show. And I mean to kind of say that in a way, we want to be empathetic, but we're putting on a show. We want the experience that they come to distinguish what CTGI can offer as a practice that other practices can't offer. Many medical practices are overwhelmed, busy, and they don't take the importance of patient experience as much as we do. If that seems to make some sense. So I think I agree. It's that focusing on the whole experience, and the way to do that is each individual member just functions on their role on the stage, so to speak.
There's also Underground Disney. Joe, Dr. Kappa, can we talk about Underground Disney?
I love Underground Disney. I took that tour myself. I know Underground Disney.
So you saw
Go for it.
Underground Disney is where all of the non-magic happens. All right. Back up years ago, Walt Disney was touring Disneyland in California. And this was before Disney World in Florida was being built. And he was supposedly in Tomorrowland, where everything's the future. And one of their cast members, as Dr. Kappa said, they're putting on a show and they call their employees cast members. One of their cast members from Frontierland, a cowboy, was walking through Tomorrowland to get to Frontierland. And Walt Disney said, oh no, who is going to believe we're in the future if a cowboy comes walking through? I must keep the magic alive. So in building Orlando, All of the non-magic is underground Disney. So as they're digging out for the 7 Cs, all of the non-magic is there. That is where the hot dogs are cooked, so you don't smell it. So you don't smell them as you're walking around in the happiest place in the world. That is where the French fries, many of them are cooked. That is where the garbage vacuum, they have a garbage vacuum that sucks garbage to keep it clean. That is where they build these chutes up so Mickey Mouse can show up and It's a Small World, talk to all the kids, and then walk down into a chute and show up somewhere else. So Mickey and Chip and Dale aren't being chased by kids crying, saying, wait for me, wait for me. So how I bring that to all of you is all of us for the patient experience, we're responsible for the magic and we want to hide the non-magic. And sometimes non-magic can be, and I'm sure it doesn't happen at CTGI, but with other healthcare groups I work with, non-magic can be some grumpiness, some colleagues who snap at each other, a room that isn't totally clean, people griping about the lab is running behind and so-and-so is this many minutes behind and letting patients hear it. That's all kind of non-magic. And so I'm all about trying to hide that and building up our colleagues and helping up each other and keeping the magic going.
That's great. And I got to say, Tricia, in the last 7 years, and people that have been around longer than 7 have seen our practice grow tremendously, from small little offices to regions to now covering almost the entire state. Pretty soon in January, we will be in the entire state as we expand into the Fairfield County area. But what happens sometimes is with that and our infrastructure growing with our management team and the help of our management team that has been unbelievable, our assistant regional operational managers, our site supervisors, right down to the staff, we have so many workflow issues and emails and lots of things go around to try to, am I doing the right thing? Accountability, trying to kind of keep up with all of this. But sometimes it becomes so complicated. And a few years ago, we tried to simplify it down to something called the CTGI Promise. This probably won't show up here, but it's a little thing that's on our desk. Let me see if I could, there it is, sorry, right there. The CTGI Promise is very simple. I promise to treat each patient as if they were a member of my family. And this kind of simplifies everything down into one sentence. I'll tell you personally, you described that 17th patient and then feeling run down after the 18th patient. When my medical assistant comes in with patient number 17 and tells me what I'm going to be expecting when I go in the room and know I might be up against something that might be a more difficult patient, I'll literally think about the CTGI Promise, touch this, and like a Notre Dame football game, walk in there with the idea, let's just start this from scratch. 9 out of 10 times it goes a lot better than I would have anticipated. And I think as our practice is so large with our staff being 300-400 and in all these locations, sometimes it becomes complicated to keep up with these workflows and emails that we keep on putting out. But this was just a way that we thought that we would simplify it. And I wonder if that can help us with the patient experience and our day-to-day lives.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's a great, and it kind of hits home for me pretty recently. And I'm going to tell you another story before I tell you why it hits home for me. In 2016, I was putting together a presentation for a large health group in Indiana, and I was researching, we're talking about patient experience, and I had been researching in 2015, Cleveland Clinic does an empathy and innovation seminar every year. And in 2015, they did it for nurses. And when you would walk into the conference hall, all over the walls were these little write-on chalkboards. And each one said the same thing. It said, when I am a patient, and then there was a spot that said, I want to feel with a line, I want to hear with a line, and I want to speak with a line. And they told everybody to come in, don't touch those, come on in. And as they talked about what the conference was to be about, they said, before you leave, I want you to take up a pen and go to one of those chalkboards. And before you answer it, I want you to put yourself in the position of when you were actually sick or when a family member was very sick. And then I want you to fill that out. And I was like, oh, well, I would write this, I would write this, I would write this. And then I got a call that my dad was very sick and I needed to quickly go to Savannah. We weren't sure if my dad was going to make it. And fortunately, he made it that time. But then I came back and the next week was my presentation. And I looked at my words and then I realized by just having gone through it with my father, my words were totally different. And in September, in late August of this year, we got a phone call that my 88-year-old mother, they thought had pancreatic cancer. They said they found a 5-centimeter tumor on her pancreas and everything started. And I am going to ask all of you right now to think about when you've had somebody who was sick, what did you want to feel? And I'm going to ask you, Dr. Kappa, when you've had a family member, what would you want to feel?
I would want to feel that I was an important person there that really felt the compassion and empathy from that individual to really kind of make me feel like a member of the family, like I was sharing this news with a family member, to know the news and how to get through it and understand it.
Yes, that's how you want to feel. What would you want to hear?
I would like to hear compassion and empathy and willingness to listen and allow me to have the time to kind of share my feelings at that moment.
I agree. And having been through that, same thing. I wanted to feel heard. Like I wanted people to listen to me and what my concerns were. And I wanted them to understand that, my mother is 88. She wanted to feel heard and she had kids and my dad has recently died and she wasn't ready for this. And she wanted people to realize she still wants to play tennis. And she wanted to hear that she had a good team. She wanted to know her doctors were, that her team was well versed in this. She wanted to know that she mattered. She wanted people to try and get her in quickly. She wanted people to make her feel she mattered. And even though they had 30 patients that day and typically 15 minutes per person, they would take the time. She wanted to feel that she shared in that decision-making, that people told her, if we're going to have this surgery, this is a big surgery. This is how it's going to impact your life. If you don't have the surgery, this is what's going to happen. So all of us, and I'm just going to cut to the chase and say September 8th, she had her surgery and they found out that it was not malignant. So God bless. And my mom played tennis again this week. So it was a good outcome, but it was really scary. And my point to all of you, if we can look at these folks and try and put ourselves, when you get some of the diagnoses you all have, which are life-changing and life-altering many times, or restricting, if we can put ourselves in their position, if we can realize, how would I want my mother to be treated, my child to be treated? And maybe that means in the care and the compassion, it doesn't mean even me saying something. Sometimes it means just a slight touch on their arm, and listening and not cutting them off and offering them a Kleenex. So if we can put ourselves in, how would I want my family to be treated when I'm calling in and I can't get in for 3 weeks, when I'm being walked back and I'm very scared? I want to know that I'm in good hands today and it's going to be okay. When you're scheduling and your schedule is booked, but let me see how I can work you in and let me see if I can talk to the doctor. And when you're billing, talking to the billing person, thank you for understanding. This is really hard and I don't understand it. And I don't know what my process is and what the actual questions I should ask. Would you mind helping me? What should I ask? I saw your scripts. I saw the things you're doing. They're all great. The fact that you offer to help people get on the portal, that is huge. The fact you offer to help people set it up, huge. So I think that's wonderful. And I think you had a great comment for that group too. Let's see. The staff treated me like a person, not a number. There's always a calm vibe. All the staff are nice to deal with. That's lovely. They actually say all patients are looking for is to be treated with kindness, compassion, and cheerfulness.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I think, the simple CTGI promise and what you said, and I think maybe that's really kind of the best way to kind of summarize this up, Tricia, is this was great. And what you took us through was a great sense of what we've been through and where we're going through. And more importantly, how we're going to just be on the next day, tomorrow morning, or actually Monday morning, but we show back up to work with new energy from what we've learned today, is to share that empathy with the patient as a member of our family, like you said, and just have that experience be something that we'd want to be treated with. But any summary or any thoughts about how we should approach Monday morning, and just what would be our new role to try to come from this with some positive energy to kind of build us all up?
Well, I would just tell you, I just want to reinforce that each one of your teammates, you're important. You have a big impact. And whether it is using someone's name, whether it is helping them to the car with an umbrella, whether it is saying welcome back, whether it is listening, whether it's remembering that that older person has had an amazing life, incredible things to teach us, and maybe they just can't hear us. And so if we talk to them instead of at them, and we slow down, all of these things that you do for your patients, if we do it for each other, it keeps this amazing CTGI culture going. But I think if I were to close with one quote, my very favorite quote is from Maya Angelou. And she says, "They may forget your name, but they will never forget how you made them feel." That's what I think.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And this has been great. And we hope it's not 7 years before we do something like this again, to keep us engaged and keep building us up and keep working us forward. But thank you for taking the time to do this with us.
Thanks for having me back. And for those of you I saw 7 years ago, I hope our paths cross again. Thanks, Dr. Kappa.
Take care now.